Devotees, I would like to welcome you all for this Holiness Chandramauli Swami's daily online class. Thank you all for joining today. My humble obeisances to you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna Mataji, my humble obeisances to you. All glories to Prabhupada. So we will be giving, today's class will be given by Her Grace, Sridevi Mataji on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 16, verse 20. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Dina Prabhu, please accept my most humble obeisances. And I offer my humble obeisances to all the devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to our Guru Parampara. Thank you all so much for coming to this class. I am very grateful for your presence and I humbly seek your blessings so that I can do my seva very nicely by your mercy and empowerment. As Prabhu said, we are continuing our reading of Canto 1, Chapter 16, which is how Parikshit received the age of Kali. Right now, we are in that section where Dharma, the bull, is speaking to Mother Cow. Dharma is the principle of religion, and Mother Cow is Mother Earth. So, Maharaj Parikshit actually sees a Shudra attacking the cow and the bull, beating them on the leg. And so, therefore, he immediately rushes to punish the Shudra, who then begs for forgiveness. At that time, Dharma starts talking to Mother Cow. And we are hearing that conversation. And we are also hearing the wonderful purports from Srila Prabhupada. So, I'll start with the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So here we have the verse which goes like this. पादैन्युनां शोचसीमैकपादम् आत्मानं वा वृषलैर्भोक्ष्यमाणम् आहो सुरादिनृतयज्ञभागान् प्रजा उतस्मिन् मघवती avarshati. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I have lost my 3 legs and I am now standing on one only. Are you lamenting for my state of existence? Or are you in great anxiety because henceforward the unlawful meat eaters will exploit you? Or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for living beings because of their sufferings due to famine and drought? Purport. With the progress of the age of Kali, 4 things particularly, namely the duration of life, mercy, the power of recollection, and moral or religious principles will gradually diminish. Since dharma or the principles of religion would be lost in the proportion of 3 out of 4, the symbolic bull was standing on one leg only. When 3/4 of the population of the whole world becomes irreligious, the situation is converted into hell for the animals. In the age of Kali, godless civilizations will create so many so-called religious societies in which the personality of Godhead will be directly or indirectly defied. And thus faithless societies of men will make the world uninhabitable for the saner section of people. There are gradations of human beings in terms of proportionate faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The first class faithful men are the Vaishnavas and the Brahmanas, then the Kshatriyas, then the Vaishyas, and then the Shudras, and then the Mlechas, the Yavanas, and at last the Chandals. The degradation of the human instinct begins from the Mlechas, and the Chandal state of life is the last word in human degradation. All the above terms mentioned in the Vedic literatures are never meant for any particular community or birth. They are different qualifications of human beings in general. There is no question of birthright or community. One can acquire the respective qualifications by one's own efforts. And thus, the son of a Vaishnav can become a Mlecha, and this is happening today. Or the son of a Chandal can become more than a Brahmana, all in terms of their association and intimate relation with the Supreme Lord. The meat eaters are generally called Mlechas, but all meat eaters are not Mlechas. Those who accept meat in terms of scriptural injunctions are not Mlechas, but those who accept meat without restriction are called Mlechas. Beef is forbidden in the scriptures, and the bulls and cows are offered special protection by followers of the Vedas. But in this age of Kali, people will exploit the body of the bull and the cow as they like, and thus they will invite sufferings of various types. The people of this age will not perform any sacrifice. The Mlecha population will care very little for performances of sacrifices, although performance of sacrifice is essential for persons who are materially engaged in sense enjoyment. In the Bhagavad Gita 3:14 to 16, performance of sacrifices is strongly recommended. The living beings are created by the creator Brahma. And just to maintain the created living being progressively towards the path back to Godhead, the system of performing sacrifice is also created by him. The system is that living beings live on the produce of grains and vegetables, and by eating such foodstuff, they get vital power of the body in the shape of blood and semen. And from blood and semen, one living being is able to create other living beings. But the production of grains, grass, etc. becomes possible by rain. And this rain is made to shower properly by performance of recommended sacrifices. Such sacrifices are directed by the rites of the Vedas, namely Sam, Yajur, Rig, and Atharva. In the Manusmriti, it is recommended that by offerings of sacrifice on the altar of the fire, the sun god is pleased. When the sun god is pleased, he properly collects water from the sea, and thus sufficient clouds collect on the horizon and rains fall. After sufficient rains fall, there is sufficient production of grains for men and all animals, and thus there is energy in the living being for progressive activity. The Mlechas, however, make plans to install slaughterhouses for killing bulls and cows along with other animals, thinking that they will prosper by increasing the number of factories and live on animal food without caring for performance of sacrifices and production of grains. But they must know that even for the animals, they must produce grass and vegetables. Otherwise, animals cannot live. And to produce grass for the animals, they require sufficient rains. Here we go again. Therefore, they have to depend ultimately on the mercy of the demigods like sun god, Indra, and Chandra, and such demigods must be satisfied by performance of sacrifice. The material world is a sort of prison house, as we have several times mentioned. The demigods are the servants of the Lord who see to the proper upkeep of the prison house. These demigods want to see that the rebel living beings who want to survive faithlessly are gradually turned towards the supreme power of the Lord. Therefore, the system of offering sacrifice is recommended in the scriptures. The materialistic men want to work hard and enjoy fruitive results for sense enjoyment. Thus, they are committing many types of sins at every step of life. Those, however, who are consciously engaged in the devotional service of the Lord are transcendental to all varieties of sin and virtue. Their activities are free from the contamination of the three modes of material nature. For the devotees, there is no need for performance of prescribed sacrifices because the very life of the devotee is a symbol of sacrifice. But persons who are engaged in fruitive activities for sense enjoyment must perform the prescribed sacrifices because that is the only means to get free from the reaction of all sins committed by fruitive workers. Sacrifice is the means for counteracting such accumulated sins. The demigods are pleased when such sacrifices are performed, just as prison officers are satisfied when the prisoners are turned into obedient subjects. Lord Chaitanya, however, has recommended only one yagya or sacrifice called the Sankirtan yagya, the chanting of Hare Krishna, in which everyone can take part. Thus, both devotees and fruitive workers can derive equal benefit from the performance of Sankirtan yagya. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा ललिता श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजना सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सहगणा ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितं हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी ऋषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नमः। ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते चंद्रमौली स्वामी नीति नामिने नमः। ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नीति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So Dharma the bull is talking to Mother Cow, and they're both actually sharing their sorry plight with each other in the form of these questions. Actually, we are getting to understand what is the state of religion and what is the state of the poor animals in this age of Kali. All this is because man has become completely ignorant about who he is, what he is supposed to do, and what is the goal of life. So everyone, practically speaking, excuse me, is completely and totally immersed in only one thing: sense gratification. How can I enjoy myself more? How can I collect more? How can I have more? How can I eat more? How can I defend more? How can I just basically eating, sleeping, mating, defense, these four activities, which are animal activities, how can I increase them more and more without any cost to me? This is the whole program today. Unfortunately, this is a very perverted program because the whole system is very intricately connected. We are not the only people on earth. We behave like that. But there is a whole system in place. Demigods are in actual charge of all the different necessities of life. Let's go to chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, verse 11, where Prabhupada clearly says the demigods, being pleased with you, pleased with your sacrifices, will in turn please you, and therefore peace and prosperity will reign for all. So man cannot just live simply according to his whims and fancies, just as he likes. Because he has been gifted the human form of life, which is the highest on the evolutionary scale, there is a certain duty towards the higher beings like the demigods, and of course to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna himself. You can go to verse 11. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you. And thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. Here, see how nicely Prabhupada is really clearly describing everything of how the affairs of the universe are being carried out. It's not just automatic. Only a child, a foolish, innocent child can think, oh, everything is just happening just like that. But a man who is a little bit observant also can understand a car cannot move without a driver, a computer cannot run without an operator, the trains cannot run without the train man. The whole, whatever systems are set up, somebody is controlling the switches, the programming, the whatever it is. It cannot just happen by itself. So how can this whole universe just go on by itself? This is the most ridiculous assumption that people make. The demigods are empowered administrators of material affairs. The supply of air, light, water, and all benedictions for maintaining the body and soul of every living entity is entrusted to demigods, who are innumerable assistants in different parts of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their pleasure and displeasure are dependent on the performance of yajna by the human being. Some of the yajnas are meant to satisfy particular demigods, but even in so doing, Lord Vishnu is worshipped in all yajnas as the chief beneficiary. It is stated also in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna himself is the beneficiary of all kinds of yajnas. Bhuktaram yajna tapasam. Therefore, ultimate satisfaction of Yajnapati is the chief purpose of all yajnas. When these yajnas are perfectly performed, naturally the demigods in charge of the different departments of supply are pleased, and there is no scarcity in the supply of natural products. So, therefore, in the olden days, the kings were entrusted with this task of ensuring that their citizens received plenty of grains, plenty of rainfall, the animals received plenty of grass by doing proper sacrifices. So, they would perform elaborate pujas and homas, engaging the best brahmanas, the best ingredients to please all the demigods. In fact, Nanda Maharaj was also trying to do that, remember? And then Krishna convinces him, no, 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 we'll worship Govardhan Hill. So, this is the system set up by the Supreme Lord to help those who are engaged in fruitive activities to hold themselves accountable to a higher power. Actually, the demigods are not the Supreme Lord, they are simply administrators. But those who don't believe in the Supreme Lord, or those who don't know about the Supreme Lord, or have a particular affinity for a particular demigod, are encouraged then to please that demigod at least, saying that way you're admitting that a higher power is in charge of something, and that by pleasing that demigod, then you are blessed with whatever it is, some demigods you worship for a good wife, a good son, etc., etc. So performance, let's keep going below the next part of the purport, please. Performance of yajnas has many side benefits, ultimately leading to liberation. By performance of yajnas, all activities become purified as stated in the Vedas. One's eatables become sanctified, eating sanctified food, one's existence become purified. By purification of existence, finer tissues in the brain, memory becomes sanctified. And when memory is sanctified, one can think of higher transcendental subject matters, which is a great need of present day human society. So you see how intricate is this cycle. Remember in school we learned the rain cycle, the water cycle, how the water, comes down from the clouds and then it falls on the earth, and how grains are produced and how grass is produced. And then again, the sun takes up all the water from by the process of evaporation. Again, clouds are formed. And so this cycle goes on and on. But for all this, the sun god, the wind god, the rain god, all these are involved. So nobody can just manufacture things and think, I have done it. Because where does that come from? Even to manufacture a nut or a bolt. And by the way, Prabhupada said we cannot eat nuts and bolts. People think just by increasing factories, we will continually have increased prosperity. But the opposite is happening because people are ignoring God and the laws of God. We cannot eat nuts and bolts. In fact, the situation is becoming more and more dire because people are so addicted to flesh eating that they're simply interested in keeping animals for what? Meat eating, for slaughter. But even these animals need grass, fodder, grains for eating. And so they have to grow these things in order to feed even those animals that they want to kill and eat. Now, to grow those things, we need rains. And where are the rains going to come from? From the demigod who is in charge of rain, who is ultimately, of course, under the control of the Supreme Lord. But people don't realize this. And the day will come when there'll be shortage of even food because, grains are not being produced, rains are not there. Grass will become scarcer. Animals, because they'll be being gobbled up so much. Slowly, we will see the extinction of even mother cow. So there will be no more animals. There'll be no more food grains. And the day will come when man will have no choice but to eat his fellow men. Cannibalism. That day is also coming. Yes. Srila Prabhupada, was in a conversation with Allen Ginsberg, and he was describing the terrible march of Kali Yuga and how things will become more and more scarce and how flesh eating will become prominent. And then Allen Ginsberg was just listening spellbound. And then he leaned towards Prabhupada and said, and then what will happen? And Prabhupada also leaned forward and he said, and then I will eat you and you will eat me. It's a very, historic conversation that has been recorded. So this is this position we are coming to, folks. Man is going to become like an animal. He's already becoming more and more like an animal, and the day will come when he will eat his fellow men. Especially, small children will be the first to be preyed on because they are small, helpless, vulnerable, etc. So, to prevent this sorry state of affairs, Lord Chaitanya came. Because simply by chanting Hare Krishna, you're performing the best yajna of all. There is no need for elaborate pujas, homas, collecting ingredients, calling first class brahmanas. Everybody can just come together, clap their hands, and chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Because this is the prescribed Yuga Dharma for this age of Kali, because no one is qualified anyway. Kalau Shudra Sambhavaha. No one is able to do anything properly in this day and age. Everything is getting reduced. Kali Yuga is a very sorry state of affairs, and it's a very miserable time for human beings, especially the saner section of society, as Prabhupada is writing over here. Okay, let's go back to the main purport. Please. Yeah. So much irreligion. When 3/4 of the population becomes irreligious, situation is converted into hell for the animals. Today, if you go and see how the animals are being born, how they are kept captive with no space to even move, how they are transported and how they are ultimately slaughtered, you will not be able to believe the inhumane treatment of what is being meted out to those poor innocent animals, with especially mother cow, the pig, chickens, goats, lambs, fish. So much slaughtering on such a massive organized scale that it is unbelievable what horrors are being perpetrated. And all this is coming back to us in the form of climate crises, global warming, hurricanes, earthquakes, pestilence, wars, floods, tornadoes, volcanic eruptions, you name it. All this is because Mother Nature, these are her children. So if we ill-treat one section of nature, nature will react by giving us all these things. And then we complain, oh, there is so much, problems in the world today. There's, well, if we followed the laws of God, there wouldn't be any problems and the peace and prosperity would reign for all. But because of the darkness of ignorance, people do not know the simple process of Sankirtan Yagya, and therefore devotees are doing everything they can to give books, to hold Sankirtans, to tell people about Krishna, to invite them to our temples, to take part in festivals, to distribute prasadam, just to save the people from gliding down towards hell. Anyone who takes even a morsel of prasadam is saved from taking animal birth. He or she will at least get human birth. And Srila Prabhupada says they will actually take birth in a family of devotees. So then Prabhupada goes on to describe the different types of meat eaters. All meat eaters are not mlechas, because those who eat without any restriction, they are called mlechas. There are those who eat meat only under certain conditions on certain days after offering it to Mother Kali or their own, the Islam religion has some halal meat and so many. I don't know all those details, but, only on certain days, only in certain ways it's to be cooked, etc. So at least they're acknowledging some kind of restriction due to obedience to a higher power. So they are not considered as bad as the mlechas. But in general, meat eating is something that civilized human beings do not do. And Prabhupada rarely clearly writes, even if you're born in such a community, you don't have to be like that. By your own efforts, you can rise to the level of a Brahmana. And many times the Vaishnavas are gliding down towards Mlecha and Yavana. I still remember I was so shocked when a South Indian lady, Pakka, we are the same, I'm a South Indian Brahmin, Pakka South Indian Brahmin, as they say. Her son went abroad and began eating beef. And she was telling my mother very, nonchalantly, yeah, he eats beef over there. And I was thinking, is this what you have trained your son for? Is this what you have sent your son for higher education to get degraded? But people don't even understand the consequences of the action. They think imitating the West is everything. And so it is fashionable to do what the Westerners do. But people have forgotten that Vedic culture is actually the only culture which will take you back home, back to Godhead, not the Western culture, which simply propagates hedonism and endless sense gratification, senseless sense gratification, and ultimately it ends in a very miserable condition of life and also death. So we must understand all these Vedic injunctions and we must help other people to uplift themselves from whatever level they are at to a higher consciousness. On the other hand, their continual exploit of Mother Nature and her resources is entangling them more and more in sinful reactions. Okay, let's keep going further, please. The next section. They will not perform any sacrifice. They will not care for anything except sense enjoyment. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself is teaching Arjuna the importance and performance wise sacrifice is strongly recommended. And I highly recommend that you read those particular verses in the Bhagavad Gita. So then Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain that today what's going on is massive installation of slaughterhouses to kill innocent animals. Like we said before, even these animals, to raise them, need food, fodder, grains, grass, etc. And where will that come from? From rains. And without rains, we won't have that either. So, even the demigods, for satisfying them, even the performance of yajna, yajnapati is Vishnu. So ultimately, even by performing that particular yajna, we are ultimately satisfying Vishnu. So some people may say, oh, I don't believe in Krishna. I don't believe in, anybody other than my Durga Devi or Shiva or Ganesh. So Krishna says, all right, if you have faith in that particular demigod, I will make your faith steady in that particular demigod. But know that whatever you're offering to the demigod ultimately comes to me, because the demigods in turn offer it to Krishna. Demigods are simply like departmental heads, you can say. To give a comparison, you have a president, you have a prime minister, you have the local states persons, etc. Then you have departmental heads. So like that, they are simply empowered administrators of this universe. They are not all in all. They're highly powerful beings, but they are also subordinate to Krishna. Krishna is the supreme controller. And so devotees, being intelligent, go straight to the topmost. Worship of Krishna, pleasing Krishna, serving Krishna. And so they are immune from all this completely. See the beauty of Krishna consciousness. We don't have to separately try to satisfy each demigod. We don't have to do separate demigod worship of different demigods. Simply by worshipping Krishna, through any of the 9 processes of devotional service, we please Krishna and all the demigods in turn become satisfied. We don't have to separately do it. So the life of a devotee itself is one of sacrifice because he has surrendered to the higher power, the supreme power, in fact, and is trying his or her level best to live according to the injunctions of the Shastras, to follow true religion, which means to follow the laws of God. Srila Prabhupada, when he was asked, what is religion? He said, One time, he defined it in different ways. One time he said, real religion means to love God. And that time he said, real religion means to follow the laws of God, which is the same thing, because when you love someone, you want to please them, right? And why is Krishna giving all these injunctions? To save us from degradation and to keep us on the path back home, back to Him, to keep us on the move, on the progressive path of purification. Because right now we are very mixed, we are very impure, we have many, many material attachments and material desires and material hankerings, lamentations, etc. We are not on the pure platform yet. But the Vedic process is so wonderful that simply by taking part in it, we are gradually getting more and more purified. We are getting a chance to fulfill whatever sensory needs are there in a legitimate, lawful, legal manner. Nothing is denied. If you want to get married, you can get married, but there is a prescribed way for begetting children. You want to eat sumptuous food, eat sumptuous food, but first offer it to Krishna with love and devotion, then you eat it. So, like this, asceticism is not our path. Our path is of offering everything to Krishna and then taking the remnants of the food or whatever it may be in our offering. Excuse me. So, this is the process that Krishna has given us, and Srila Prabhupada, in his great mercy, has come down to this material world to teach us how to get disentangled from the material energy. The materialists who are only after sense gratification will implicate themselves more and more in the sinful reactions, because at every step we are committing some atrocity, some violence. Simply by breathing, so many little living entities are getting destroyed. Simply by stepping on the ground and walking, so many living entities are getting killed. What about all that reaction? But we can counteract all those things by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you all for listening very patiently. We can now open up for comments, questions, corrections.
Mataji, thank you for a wonderful class. So dear devotees, as usual, I would make a pledge, a request, a plea to turn on your cameras if you can. If you're in a place where you can comfortably do so, we can make the session more interactive and you can go ahead and ask a question. You can also put in your questions in the chat window, which I will read it out if you are not in a position to speak. So thank you very much. So floor is open for questions now. Thank you. So Mataji, I have a question whilst the devotees contemplate and about this. So when we do our prescribed duties, yajna, so, Prabhupada also writes prescribed duties as yajna, and yajna is also the sacrifice, fire sacrifice that's there and interchangeably sort of used, or that's how I understand. And by performing those sacrifices or your prescribed duties, because ultimately Krishna is the benefactor, Vishnu is the benefactor. If it's a fire yajna, the fire is the mouth of Vishnu and he's the benefactor and he's pleased. Similarly, if we do our prescribed duties, Krishna is pleased. So that's how I understand it. But Prabhupada's purport, where he says that if you do prescribed duties, if you do your prescribed duties, that is the only way, through yajna, is the only way that you can counteract your sins. Now, this is something I mean, it's there in Bhagavad Gita, it's there also in this Bhagavatam, but I've never thought about this because I've always thought the only way to negate sins is by bhakti, because otherwise there's no way to counteract your sins. So this is very interesting. Can you, Mataji, elaborate?
Yeah. So for sinful deeds, we have to atone. It's called prayaschit. Some atonement is necessary, some sacrifice is necessary. But that simply negates that particular sin. It doesn't uproot the tendency to commit further sins. So that is why continually one must keep making these sacrifices and keep trying to please, because we go on sinning again and again and again. But to put an end to this, we want to uproot the sinful tendency. That doesn't come by performance of yajna, performance of sacrifice. If you go to Nectar of Instruction, you will read over there about how prayashchita or atonement is prescribed for those who have committed sin. But the tendency to commit sin is not uprooted. Like,
Mm.
the example is given of the elephant which goes and bathes and then comes out and again throws mud on itself. So, what is the use of such atonement? Hmm? But in Bhakti Yoga, even the tendency to perform sinful activities, that itself is uprooted by the root. So one is getting thoroughly purified and one is able to then resist that tendency to commit sinful activities, which is not there in the previous process. Because what's the point of committing sin, atoning, then again committing sin, then again atoning? This process, just goes on and on. But the person doesn't give up that tendency to commit sin. You
Mm.
see the difference?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's the difference.
So a bad karma can be counteracted by a good karma. Is that how let's say,
Yes,
good karma
but
could be atonement, or so
yes,
bad
but
karma.
there
Yeah.
are,
Mhm.
for a particular sinful deed, there are prescribed certain yagyas you should do. Oh, you have committed abortion, then you should do like this. Then you have killed someone, then you should do like this. You have committed thievery, you've stolen something. So there are different prescription, or rather prescribed pujas, homas, yagyas for all these different things, which I personally don't know. I'm not that familiar or conversant with all those things. I'm only familiar with Bhakti Yoga, but I do know that for different sinful deeds, one must give so much grains in charity on this day to so many brahmanas, and go to this holy place and do this, or give some charity. Like this, there are different things for different levels of sinful activities. But as you said correctly, Bhakti Yoga, we don't bother about all these things because we are doing the topmost yoga. By engaging in Bhakti Yoga, Putam, Bijam, Papam, everything, all those three levels, they are completely, removed.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you.
Sinful reactions in the form of present sufferings, sinful reactions that are yet to come due to our past misdeeds, and like that. So different levels are there. So all of them are uprooted.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice question.
Any other comments, realizations, anything that struck from Prabhupada's verse? It's quite a very instructive and a heavy verse. So, uh, I mean, I would just like to share, whilst the devotees think, Mataji, if that's okay, just a small incident about the duplicity of the people in general in this demonic or in this civilization. There was somebody at the door yesterday, and I told my wife, please open up the doors, Miko, maybe because I had a meeting, maybe they are Jehovah's Witness or somebody from another charity organization. And then afterwards, after my meeting was finished, I said, who was at the door? And she said, oh, they were from this animal welfare organization, and they have set up a charity for the abuse that is being done by the pets. So, when there is Christmas time, especially during Christmas, people tend to give gifts, and then pet dogs, pet cats, quite attractive, and so a lot of pets are given and taken during those time. And what happened is that after that period is over, 1 week, 2 week, they realize that it's a burden to maintain them, and then they would really abuse them, or kind of leave them aside, or kind of leave them in the open fields and things like that. So this charity organization was very much concerned with the welfare of those type of animals. And I was thinking, maybe if I was there, I missed that opportunity to have that discussion with this gentleman, because the next question, I was tempting to ask him that, is he vegan? Is he vegetarian? Because on one hand, they are concerned about the animals which are abandoned, but at the same time, they would more than happy go in KFC or McDonald's and have a chicken burger. So you see the duplicity. in the world that we see, right? That all this,
Yeah.
and Prabhupada was saying, I mean, in the statement for the purpose that in this age of Kali, there will be many false institutions will be set up and preach the message and preach their own philosophy. And this incident struck me from yesterday.
Yes.
We have all these
Yes.
institutions who would claim to act morally, but then
Right.
they would.
Right, right. Yeah, they do all kinds of things. There's a Sierra Club, something, they are nature lovers and they advocate that we must take care of nature, take care of it. But when I call them up once and ask, so are you all vegetarian or vegan? No, not really. And I was thinking, you claim to be nature lovers and want to take care of animals, but then what about the animals you're eating? And there's a very dark future. There's a very dark future for such human beings who put dead bodies of animals, chickens, this, that into their bodies. What is their future? Just think. They, and especially mother cow, for every hair on her body, you have to take birth again and be killed that many times for killing one mother cow. It is so heavy. It's a very hellish and very dark future that they're making for themselves. And you see, I mean, their health goes down, they become more and more obese, they have multiple, chronic arthritis, and then hypertension and diabetes, ulcer. So many things come because meat is not our diet, it's the diet of animals. But they don't get it. Why? Why is America having so much a problem of obesity? Because they're eating such horrible food.
Yes, Mataji. Yes, thank you. Prabhupada also makes a very interesting point where he says that unrestricted meat eating is in the category of malechas.
Mm.
But if it is, and you also mentioned Mataji in your explanation that when there is some restrictions offered, then it's not as bad as the malechas. Um, and probably Prabhupada is also saying they are not malechas because there is some restrictions there. So probably, every time you see the halal meat that is eaten, there is some principles behind it. But yeah, again, it's probably not in the category of what Prabhupada is saying, but at least there is some sort of viewpoint there.
At least they're admitting that there is a higher power and there are certain restrictions to be followed in order to, maintain their religious doctrines or whatever their religious injunctions. So that means they're at least admitting to a higher power, which the mindless sense gratifiers, they don't even care about that part. And you can sing more and more, Lecha, Yavana, Chandal, Chandala, dog eaters. But as the scriptures say, even one who comes from the family of dog eaters can be elevated to a level of spiritual master simply by following a bona fide spiritual master himself and following this process of bhakti yoga. See how powerful, how purifying is the process of bhakti yoga.
Yes.
While a person who is a Vaishnav, who comes from such a high background of piety and purity and devotion to the Supreme Lord, can fall down to the level of Mlecha, Yavana, and so on. And this is happening today. People from very pious backgrounds from India, born and brought up in this culture, they go to the different countries of the West and finished. All the degradation begins, they indulge in. Why it is happening in India itself now? All the things that 20 years, 30 years back began in the West, drugs, drinks, rock and roll, this, that. All that, I'm told, Indian youth are now indulging in all those things now. So, see how heavy the effect of Kali Yuga is, that even the land of spiritual culture, the land of Dharma, Punya Bhumi, Bharat Bhumi, is getting infected with all those things. It's a very heavy, very difficult time for the whole world. Therefore, Sankirtan Yagya is the only way to save the world. This Harinam Sankirtan has come to save the people from the darkness of this age.
And it's such an easy, joyful, and sublime process at the same time, yet the most powerful and direct.
Yes. very purifying, very potent, very powerful, and guaranteed.
Yes,
Guaranteed
guaranteed. Correct.
process.
Yes.
There is no two ways about it. There is no, well, maybe, no, we. No, Prabhupada says in 624, chapter 6, verse 24, success is sure for the rigid practitioner.
Hmm.
Prabhupada is giving guarantee. Who gives guarantee in today's world of anything? You go to any store for anything. Well, we can give you 10 months guarantee. Well, if you pay a premium, then we can give it for 3 more years. I mean, all this is going on. All this is going on. They sell you a product and they say, well, if you want it to have a guarantee, then you pay premium for 3 years on. I mean, all kinds of things are going on in the name of collecting money from you by any means. But there is no guarantee anyway. What Prabhupada is saying here, success is sure for the rigid practitioner. And he would say, you will see Krishna face to face. You follow this process, you will see Krishna face to face. How powerful is that? God Almighty, the Supreme Lord Himself, you will see Him face to face. See how Prabhupada is so mercifully taking us all the way back to the kingdom of God through this process. In fact, he said, when you come back to the spiritual world, and he gestured, I'll show you it. I will take your hand and I will take Krishna's hand and I will put it together like this.
So much assurance, huh? Don't worry, I'm
Mm,
there. And
yes.
yes,
So much assurance. Why not follow Prabhupada? What else is there to do anyway? What else will we do anyway? Is there anything else?
yeah, and this is the contemplation, right, that we have to do each ourselves, right? Because sometimes we devotees, not devotees, but there has to be that, there has to be a faith with us that Prabhupada has given us everything. There is nothing missing. There is nothing that is higher that we need to seek outside another philosophy or another. We go and see another Babaji's here, other or the devotees, other sampradayas, then and then we think that, oh, maybe something's missing. And but that faith
The
has to be.
mind can very easily, mind, Chanchala hi mana Krishna, it can be tricked very easily. That is why Prabhupada made this association. And he said 90% of your spiritual life and your progress depends on your association. Therefore, we must keep the association of those who are faithful to Prabhupada so that we will stay faithful to Prabhupada and we will not get sidetracked. We will not get deceived into following something else. We respect all the Vaishnava acharyas, we respect all the sampradayas, we respect all the other Gaudiya Vaishnavas, etc. But we remain chaste to Srila Prabhupada's instructions. And one of his major instructions was do not go outside of ISKCON. He
Yes.
actually wrote a letter. Mahamaya Mataji, this past Friday, gave a class in which she clearly said, in that letter, Prabhupada is clearly writing, do not go to my God brothers, for they will not be able to help you.
Mm. No, these are all sort of subtleties, and those subtleties needs to be mindful of, at least for me, to ensure that there is a strong faith. So
Mhm. And that comes by associating with people who have strong faith, who are
yes,
themselves, fixed in their devotion to Krishna. That is why we need good association. That is why we need good association.
yes, thank you. Any other comments, questions? So interesting topic. I'm sure you have got doubts that you can ask. Uh, Anything that you want to share is also welcome, even if it's not a question. Okay. So, Mataji, if there's no further questions, can I humbly suggest we can conclude if there's no other questions from the devotees or anything you would like to share, Mataji? The last closing comment.
Well, I wanted to just reiterate what a beautiful, wonderful, sublime, straightforward, easy to follow process we have been given by Srila Prabhupada. We don't have to worry about anything. Simply by following Srila Prabhupada, we can attain success. Simply by following his instructions, simply by following his bona fide representative's instructions, we can attain the highest. Prabhupada in the early days, and I will just end with that. I know we have only 5 minutes. There was one very young Mataji. Her name was Sharadiya Mataji. She was only 16. But after Prabhupada's class, she was very, very curious, intrigued, enchanted by hearing about the spiritual world. And so she was asking questions about Krishna, about the spiritual world. And Prabhupada became so pleased. With a big oceanic smile, he looked all around at everyone and said, "Just see this young girl. She wants to see Krishna. She wants to go back to see Krishna." And turning to her, he said, "Yes, you will see Krishna face to face, and Krishna will kiss you also." Just see how confidently Prabhupada is saying this. You will see Krishna face to face, and Krishna will kiss you also. Can you imagine that? It's just unbelievable mercy we are receiving. Unbelievable. For us, I mean, I cannot even understand the depths of mercy that Srila Prabhupada is showing to all of us. And he said, I am very liberal. I am 80% liberal with you. If I had to be strict with you, you would faint. If I had to tell you all the rules and regulations, you would faint. I'm 80% liberal with you. So he has made it even more simple, even more. He's so merciful. He's the embodiment of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are unbelievably merciful. What more we want? Tell me.
More mercy. Gauranga.
Gauranga! You have been given an appropriate name, Prabhu.
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, devotees, for joining. So we can conclude the class with a prayer. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Sadhu Sangha ki jai.
Jai.
Dina Prabhu ki jai. All devotees ki
Grace.
jai.